I should say. I'm glad that you're all getting used to Spanish timings for lunch. Yeah, normally we say when you arrive in Bilbao, you have to put your stomach back 3 hours from Northern Europe. And you can go back and tell your institutions that we really made you work. You even had to work through your lunch. But this is a minor issue. Welcome to this seminar. Before we start, of course, being the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work, the first thing we will do is the safety briefing. We are not expecting a fire alarm today. So if you hear one, we leave the building. The nearest fire exit to here is back towards the main entrance, and there's actually an exit just to your left next to the gentlemen's toilets. The second exit is a main entrance to the building, and there's in fact a third just past there as well. You can follow me if you can keep up. If for any reason you are unable to walk down 5 flights of stairs, then please let me know and we will inform you of our alternative arrangements for those situations, because as you noticed, we have 5 floors up and you can't use a lift. We have a very full agenda today, which is good news, and we have a lot of expert speakers. We are also web streaming. This is a little bit of an experiment, so it should be very interesting. The one thing it does mean is that if you wish to speak for when we're doing questions and answers, for example, please, you have to use the mic, because otherwise anybody who is following this online will not be able to hear us. I will stop here now and hand over to Director of EU-OSHA, Krista Sedlacek.
Thank you very much. Welcome also from my side here in Bilbao. You see, we arranged a nice weather too. Tomorrow it's even better. I'm very pleased to welcome you as experts from different organizations and from different member states. It is the 4th e-tool seminar and organized by EU-OSHA. And this time we are not talking about fundamental issues related to e-tools or how to improve sustainability. Maybe it's part of our discussion, but we mainly focus on e-tools related to the management of dangerous substances. Why? Maybe most of you know that EU-OSHA has over the last years organized the Healthy Workplace campaign, a 2-year campaign all over Europe, together with the member states, but also with non-member states like Norway, Switzerland, and even the Western Balkan countries. And there in our former e-tools seminar, we, as I said, talked more about the technical aspects, how to distribute, how to promote. Of course, this is again part of the seminar today, but strong focus on dangerous substances because of the campaign. You know, the campaign wants to raise awareness about, in the case of dangerous substances, how to prevent any harm to the health of workers and how to manage dangerous substances at company level. And one of the, let's say, main areas, and very much appreciated by our clients and partners, is the presentation of tools for companies, especially micro and small enterprises. Of course, they need really practical use, and therefore I think it is important that we can maybe after this seminar also include in our portfolio for the Healthy Workplace campaign the offer of practical e-tools related to the management of dangerous substances. And this is one of the major aims of the seminar, that we get presentation from you, experts developing and using e-tools. And then let's have a discussion, especially tomorrow, the second day, how first of all, to exchange experience on this, on the e-tools, on different e-tools, how to transfer e-tools used in your organization or in your country, transfer it to other organizations, to other member states. And I think there are several aspects we can discuss tomorrow in the working groups related to the presentation of today and tomorrow, and then see how we can succeed. I think this seminar should be of benefit for you as a developer, as practitioners in the area of occupational safety and health, and of course for us to see what we can offer during the next 2 years, 2018 and 19, of course beyond, to our target groups, stakeholders, via the website, what we can offer, and here again focus micro and small enterprises. So that's something I hope that we will achieve, that all of us have a benefit and we can go home and work on a further development, further cooperation and communication. Tim or Sarah mentioned it already. This is first time for us. It's a web streaming. It's so we can be seen by several thousand people, I heard. 1,000. Yeah, but it's fine. And I'm really looking forward also to getting feedback from the seminar, from the discussion, and looking forward also to include your e-tools or other e-tools from your area of work over the next years, and then we have to discuss how to do it together. Of course, we will assist in distributing, maybe also translating, but this is of course for discussion today and tomorrow. I will not stay all the time, but come back and especially I think in the end to get the feedback, what you agreed on and how we will proceed and go on in working together with you, but also of course your colleagues in the member state. So good luck, and I think I will hand over to Charlotte. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Krista. And thanks very much to the whole agency for having organized this seminar. It's really a great pleasure for me, so from the Commission side, to be here with you today. As you well know, the Commission strongly supports the development of e-tools. OIRA represents, of course, a real success story and a good practical example of initiatives contributing to improve working conditions in the EU. And OIRA is certainly one of the most visible and more appreciated instruments developed by the agency, but obviously it's time to reflect about other possible tools. And there is clear evidence that these IT-based tools, and more specifically interactive risk assessment tools, can play a key role to facilitate compliance with the OSH legislation, especially for small and micro enterprises. And you will certainly have noticed that the Commission adopted a communication in the beginning of this year, Safer and Healthier Work for All, Modernization of the EU-OSH legislation and policy. And part of this communication is indeed what we call the second action point, is about strongly support and boosting the availability and the use of free e-tools like OIRA or equivalent interactive risk assessment tools. So these tools are especially useful as they provide the cost-free sector-specific information and guide employers through all steps of the risk assessment process. And yes, as you very well know, they automatically generate a document record that can be used as proof of compliance and as a means to monitor effectiveness of the risk management plan. And such tools need to be significantly expanded as we see it from the Commission side, and their use needs to be recognized and integrated in the national requirements for compliance with risk assessment obligations. And as we stated in the OSH communication, on top of highlighting the OIRA importance and achievements, the Commission laid down 2 significant targets to be reached, in principle already next year, to have 150 published OIRA tools and 100,000 risk assessment carried out with these tools. And certainly to reach these targets, the EU financial and technical support, as well as the active cooperation of national and sectorial social partners, is very essential. The development and implementation of e-tools and projects also allow us to better target our audience, the small and medium-sized enterprise. It is really key to share the knowledge, what works, what doesn't work, and what are the best practices. And as announced in the OSH communication, the Commission will support a series of mutual learning exercises in Member States. And the first one of these will actually take place already next week, so in Ireland, in Dublin. And some of you will be attending this event. I already checked in the break before we started, so that's lovely to already meet. And the theme of this peer review or mutual learning exercise is indeed other web-based tools. So the activities of the agencies on e-tools and this event in Dublin, they are clearly complementary, and they are all organized to reach the same goal: improvement of OSH and sharing experiences among the Member States. So I'm sure that we will have a very fruitful seminar these 2 days. Thanks again.
Thank you, Charlotte. Just as a way of warning, are there any IT industry people here? Is people working specifically in the IT sector? No? Okay. Anyone we've missed who fits in other? What are you?
Agency?
I should have said European institutions and bodies, yes. Anybody else? Dolores? Yeah. Aha, European Environmental Bureau, yes, of course. Okay, so thank you very much. So we've got a decent mix, perhaps underrepresented in the private sector, which is a pity, but this is we have a good mix of backgrounds here. And the second question, very simple. Please raise your hand if you've been directly involved in the tool development and dissemination process before. Oh, that's good. So we've got some good experience here as well. But so we've got a good mix of people with a direct experience. So this shows we have a good mix of people here, and I hope we have a really profitable discussion. And I would stress that the meeting is very important, but you can make the connections you make around the meeting, the networking you do here, can also be very beneficial. So please talk to each other over coffee. I hand it over now to Sarah, who will introduce the workshop.
So just to briefly introduce the event, the objectives are, in relation to e-tools and dangerous substances, to share information on all aspects of safety and health e-tool development, and as part of that to stimulate thought and debate on the process, but as Tim mentioned, also very importantly to allow you to network and build links with those with a common position or interest. How does this go?
I can do it.
Yeah. The format of the event is that this afternoon we're going to hear of the practical experiences
Okay. And we have 600 staff members. And the operating principles of our institute, we have a joint board of directors made up of representatives of labor organizations and industry associations. And we've got an independent scientific commission to evaluate scientific and technical works. So now I'm showing you our tool, Serich. Briefly, there is two Serich, in fact. The first one is a website with information, and after that you download the tool and you install it only on PC. I will show you our website. Of course, our website is in French, but also in English. You can switch language here. And there is a lot of information about Serich and all the training session, the events about Serich. Here you can have the news about the softwares. After that, you have here tutorials depending on your level. You can learn how to use Serich with video in YouTube. You got also information about training sessions. We developed several a big training program with 3 different levels. The first one is a free training session. This is an e-tool. You can learn how to read, by example, a label. After that, you can learn how to assess chemical risk, and for experts, there is specific training sessions about specific area. You can here test your level, because I will explain you later. Serich is a 3 different level tool with 3 different tool depending on the level of the users. You have a level of, by example, small or medium enterprises with no knowledge about chemical risk, and you have also big companies with toxicologists or physician. So there is 3 different Serich adapt to the public. You have here a tool based on a huge database of occupational exposure. More than 1 million exposures data in this database, and when you put your industry area or some keywords, you will find specific information related to your sector. Here, of course, there is a big frequently asked questions, more than 300 question and response. And here you can download the tool and install it on PC. We develop also, in order to improve information and communication, a YouTube channel and a LinkedIn showcase with more than like 4,000 followers, and we give news about regulations, about technical advice on chemical risk. So, in fact, Serich is a tool for all, because there is 3 different user levels with 3 different Serich, from a beginner to an expert. We assess 3 areas of chemical risk assessment, not only health effects and hazards, but also fire and explosion, and also environmental risks. So there is a lot of functionalities in Serich. First of all, the basis of chemical risk assessment is inventory. You cannot realize a chemical risk assessment without an inventory of the substances and the products used in industry. So there is an input for an input assistance from labels. You can put your label or MSDS in Serich, and automatically they find the chemical hazards in the PDF, by example. After the inventory, you make a first prioritization of potential risks based only on hazard and amount in order to prioritize the risk. After that, for level 2 and level 3 only, you can draw your company and you can work by working zones. For the level 1, you only assess risk in the level of the company. In the level 2 or the level 3, you define different tasks. After that, you can really assess chemical risk. We call that a residual risk assessment, and you taking into account volatility, chemical, physical-chemical properties, type of processes, and of course risk management measures. You've got provision of targeted information all along your assessment about specific advice, technical advice, or about regulations. You've got assistance in developing a plan of preventive actions, because in fact, if you only realize assessment, there is no improvement of work conditions. So the most important is to planify real preventive actions, and CERIC is helping you to do that. There is also a lot of tool for simulate risk. This is very useful in the case of substitution. If I change a product and test another one, what is it really an improvement? And also you can test process changes and see how the risk is evolving. Of course, you need traceability. With CERIC, you can have traceability by zone, by time, by hazards, by substances, and you've got all this functionality. And you can print, of course, documents, by example, labels in case of splitting. Sometimes when you buy a huge amount of chemicals, you don't have labels when you divide it into small quantity. So in CERIC, you can print labels and put it on small quantity of products. So why the e-tools was developed? In fact, this is a long process. In 2005, we published the methodology. After that, we decided to not develop our own tool. So the market developed tools, and in fact, in 2009 there was 30 different tools, e-tools, on the market. So we conducted a study and assessed these different e-tools. We compare the results, of course, on same task, on same condition, and there were too many discount tools on the market. There was a conclusion. So in 2011, we decided to develop our own tool, but not only with INRS, but in cooperation with a lot of partners, with prevention units of the French social security system, with Ministry of Labor, and professional organizations like chemical industry, manufacture of paints, metallurgy, and garages. And now we are also working with the agricultural social insurance in France. So the strong and the weak points of CERIC is the strong point, maybe the strongest point is this is a free tool. Okay, everybody can download it, use it, call INRS for consulting, and it's free. This is an e-tool for all, because when you're working in a small companies, or when you're working in a big trust, in a multinational company, you don't have the same competencies and the same time. So there is 3 different levels, 3 different tools. I think this is a strong point for CERIC. Also, this is not just an e-tool, because you can develop the best e-tool in the world, but if you don't have support, it's nothing. So we've got a big hotline with 20 people working on that in INRS. We have set up a lot of training sessions. We have also webinars, LinkedIn, consultancy, events. It's a full area support. It's easy to update. We develop a tool of administration of the tool, so we can update it very quickly. We are supported by national partners. We are not alone. You tell us before, without the support of all the partners, employers, and state partners, you cannot have a big audience. And also, we guarantee confidentiality, because confidentiality for chemical inventory is, I think, a very important topic. Why? Because in some area, inventory of chemicals is industrial secret. For example, in cosmetics, or other areas. So you need to protect the inventory of the companies, and that's why we didn't develop a tool on the web, because you cannot really protect inventory on the web. For example, if you look at Yahoo, maybe the biggest company in the web, they are hacking the data. So we decided to develop a tool, and the data are on the computer in the companies as they are taking care themselves of the data. This is also a weak point, because when you are not using the web technology, sometimes it's more difficult to develop tools. I think the main weak points for some other partners is that it's a black box. We have a black box strategy in ENRS. I mean, we of course evaluated the methodology, but we didn't publish the methodology. Why? Because 10 years before we published methodology, and many different partners or many companies was using our methodology, but had some changes in the methodology. And in fact, when we assessed the different tools, there was too much difference in results. So we decided not to publish the methodology. This is only for PC. Sometimes like Mac geeks or Apple geeks want an Apple version of our tool. And that's it. So issues concerning developments. The first one, I think it was a huge partnership. Working with 7 organizations is sometimes difficult, because you can have different points of view. So having an agreement on methodology, on information, it was a big challenge, but we succeeded that. Confidentiality is also, I think, the biggest issue, because the web tool solutions was banished. So it was very difficult for us on an IT view. And I think another consequence of PC e-tool, PC software, is multi-user needs. When you need to share databases, working together with other colleagues in your company, it was a big challenge. We succeeded also, but it was a main issue in the development. How the draft tool was piloted, it was very complicated strategy. We have like 4 or 5 different committees. The first one was only ENRS and French assurance directors, taking the strategy of the project and the funding of the project. After that, we have a steering committee with all partners and specifically political representatives. After that, we have an operational committee. It was not political representatives, but experts, and we talk about methodology, testing. And of course, we had got a service provider and developer named Atos, a big company. And also we have a tester network, about 600 end users helping us during the development. So how the draft tool was tested? In fact, the methodology was developed between 2012 and 2014. And after that, we 50 alpha testers from partners helped us to test the methodology with direct feedback. After this alpha testing period in spring 2015, we've got 600 beta testers. There were end users testing in the companies the softwares, and we set up an online platform to have the feedback of these testers. And in the 1st of June 2015, the tool was deployed. Promotion was a big part of the project. We realized 26 national events and regional events. It was half a day of CEREC with partners and users, and of course testimony of users. The cost was supported by partners. We also pay for regional press releases because we have the aim to help small companies, and they are not reading European Commission or EU-OSHA or INRS publication, but they are reading the morning the regional press. So we decide to pay for regional press releases. Also, we participated in 8 national trade shows, 3 international symposiums. Webinars was new for us. This was the first webinars in INRS, but it was a great success. More than 2,000, about 2,000 participants in this webinar. And we have also a strategy of demultiplication, training 150 regional referents in charge of local promotion of the tool. We created also, I already tell you, a LinkedIn showcase to inform about publication and advice on chemical risk. So achieving sustainability, we spend 10% per year of initial charge for IT maintenance to assure sustainability. We've got an operational committee dedicated to the maintenance of CEREC with a frequency of 2 meetings per year, and this committee decides priority of evolutions and corrections. We signed a national agreement again in 2017 with all the partners to promote and perpetuate the tool. And every feedbacks we have now maybe more than 5,000 questions. Everything is recorded and are being used to improve the tool. And update are easy due to CEREC IT administration developing in the beginning. So my last slide is about rights issues. CEREC tool name and logo is owned by INRS. Methodology was not published and is property of INRS. We translated into English, so every company in the EU can use our tool. It's free. But we developed a tool based on the French regulation. So there is maybe some specificity really linked to the French the French regulation. But I think other company can use it. Our priority objectives in INRS is to increase the number of users, specifically small and micro and small enterprises users in France. But INRS would be open to transfer partnerships if transfer costs are covered by partners. That's it.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. Well, we've got a few minutes for some questions.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I have a question. What do you know about the effect of using this e-tool? Does the level of health improve in the companies?
Yes, it's a good question. Thank you. Right now, we don't have already evaluate Serich because it's just a 2 years old tool. So the next step for us is to find an answer to your question. But we already have testimony of enterprises, and yes, they are specifically for small and micro enterprises. Serich helped us to understand chemical risk assessment and to improve really occupational hygiene. I think specifically in order to substitute and substitution of chemicals, and we have examples of good practices after the use of Serich. But we don't have conducted a big study to really quantify the improvements.
You mentioned that you're using labels of chemical products. Are you also dealing with process-generated substances such as diesel exhaust or other substances?
Yes, of course. There is 2 different parts in the inventory. First of all, it's a labeled product. Everybody is thinking about labeled product, but we also put more than 100 processes emitting substances like a welding process, like a specific process where you cannot really easily identify substances. So yes, we have specific tools in Serich to deal with these processes emitting substances.
All right. A question down there at the end of the table.
Thank you. What is the relationship with the labor inspectorate? Are they always happy with the end result of this risk assessment when they are inspecting? Is it MasterCard and they have to prove their compliance?
Yes, okay, I understand. In fact, the French Ministry of Labor was involved in the project, and we train in every regional inspection, labor inspection, we train 1 people to be the reference, so they are aware of the methodology and they are aware of the results. But Serich is not a legal tool. In France, you can use, of course, Serich. You can use other tool, a European tool, by example. You can also use rich advices. So this is not the legal tool, but we try to make Serich the reference, and we don't have bad feedbacks or really issues with labor inspection, because when you assess with Serich, you have so many information and so many way to improve hygiene. I think if every company in France was using Serich, it would be a good idea. In fact, no, there is no problem with inspection.
Okay.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. Why is the methodology not published in the tool? I want to know more about it. And the other question is, all the substances and mixtures have the fact sheets, and in the fact sheets we have the exposure scenarios, and this tool goes to the exposure scenarios in each sector or not?
For the first question, the black book strategy, it's a clear strategy for us. As I said you before, when we published before a methodology, we was like stolen, and everybody said we are using INEAS methodology, but in fact there was little changes making big difference in results. So we, for us, publishing, we are not just only a scientific research institute, so we don't care about our impact factors on. So we decide to, of course, share the methodology with all the partners, but not to share with other companies. That's a strategy. You talk about exposure scenario. In fact, REACH is quite new, I think. We did really improvements with REACH in order to put good chemicals in the markets. But in fact, I don't know if you already been in a small company, but if you have 200 chemicals multiplied by 100 pages documents, in fact, exposure scenario is not working at all in the field. You cannot read 100,000 pages of information when you're only 3 on your company. And in fact, I don't know one company in France using really the REACH exposure scenario and the RMM given by REACH. And when you observe the risk management measures in some MSDS, there is, I think, there is not only one solution in prevention. You can confine processes, you can use BPE, you can substitute, and I think this is not the good advice just to fix on one solution made in, I think, not taking into account a real field condition. So, in fact, this is an help. When you have no advice, you can, of course, read it. But we prefer an assessment based on real conditions of work, on real context in a company. And that's why we propose this tool and not just a compliance with exposure scenario.
The person at the back first, and then you.
Thanks. Hi, I would like to know how have you validated your tool? Have you compared with the Stoffe Manager or the IFA column model or the course essentials? We've been trying to find out your engine behind the tool, and because you haven't published anything about it, what's the scientific value on it?
Yes, of course. Yeah, we have a lot of international partnership with other institutions developing tools. We worked several years ago with other institutions access different tools. So of course we learned a lot about good practices in modeling. But in fact, we don't want to be involved too much into like intercomparison of models. You can spare a lot of times. I've been working for 10 years in modeling, and when I was beginning, we was talking about the same issues, how we can have a large database to test our models, and that's it. And I think in the next 10 years, we will have the same discussion, and this is scientific discussion, very interesting, but in fact, we need to now really make improvements of hygiene in companies, and we don't want to be involved in too much discussion about this. Of course, the methodology was published in 2005. It was just an improvement of this methodology. The principle of the methodology is published, and we are updating the methodology every month. We have feedbacks. We are using our tool to improve the methodology, so we cannot publish every month if we are adding new parameters, new data. So that's why we are in a black box strategy.
Okay, and one last question here at the front, please.
Okay. I would like to come back to this question of how far the tool goes. If you promote it, do you say it's rather a first approach of a risk assessment, or can the company assume that it's compliant after when using it?
I'm not sure I understand, but I think this is a first year for beginners. Yes, there are 3 different CERIC, level 1, 2, and 3. I think this is a first year approach to begin, very easy. But for level 3, in CERIC you have others models, like we have a partnership with the American Industrial Hygienists Association, developing tools named EH-Mod, very sophisticated third-tier assessment, also skin perm, skin perm, and very different models like QSAR models into CERIC, using specialists to have a really third-tier approach, and you can put your measurements and exposure measurements in CERIC and put your expert judgment into CERIC to assess risk. So I think we cover first year, third year, and third year assessment with CERIC. Is it the good answer?
No, it refers basically to the question of, if a labor inspector comes and we assume the company uses CERIC level 3, would the labor inspector say, if you use it well, you're safe and you're compliant to legal regulations?
You cannot. Okay, I understand. Okay, we are not developing crystal ball. When you are using a model, maybe in 80% of condition, you are modeling the real condition. So you cannot assume using such a tool you can be safe. Unfortunately, this is models. This is not reality. So inspection can say, okay, even if a CERIC is telling you it's green, it's okay. Of course, specialist inspection or hygienist or physicians can tell the company you have to add risk management measures. Of course, this is only modeling.
Okay, thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. And next we have Nicoletta Godas. Do you want to say it a little better? Next up, we have Nicoletta Godas from the Bauer National Institute for Work Safety and Health, the Federal Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in Germany. Thank you very much, Nicoletta, and over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for the opportunity to present the EMKG at this seminar. EMKG stands for Easy to Use Workplace Control Scheme for Hazardous Substances. Today I'd like to talk to you about pitfalls and surprises developing an e-tool of the EMKG. At first, I have a content table for you, so you know what to expect from my presentation. At first, I will give you an overview about the EMKG. Then I will tell you something about our development and maintenance experiences and what we experienced during the promotion phase and what our plans are to ensure a sustainable EMKG. Let's start with the overview. As you all are well aware of, workplace risk assessment has its roots in the European Directive 98/24, and in Germany it has been adopted by the German occupational law, especially for hazardous substances by the Hazardous Substances Ordinance, and more specified in the technical rules. The technical rules that are most relevant for risk assessment are the technical rules that are listed on the slide. These are the rules for risk assessment involving hazardous substances, risk resulting from skin contact, inhalative exposure, fire protection measures, and risk resulting from hazardous explosive atmospheres. And it's really important to know that our tool, the EMKG, covers all these technical rules. The EMKG is a control bending tool, and it complies with German legal requirements. It consists of 3 modules covering skin contact, inhalation, and our newest module, fire and explosion risk. There is a systematic approach behind the EMKG concept. It combines information from safety data sheet, for example, labeling, occupational exposure levels, and so on, and conditions of use at your workplace. For example, quantity and release of substance, skin contact area, and duration during the task you are working with the substance. These were your input parameters, and the result of the EMKG is a specific level of control strategy. It covers the control strategies 1, 2, and 3. 1 stands for minimal standards. That are the requirements that always have to be implemented at your workplace when you are working with hazardous substances. Control strategy 2 are emission reduction measures, and control strategy 3, closed system. Of course, we have the expert judgment that is for dangerous substances that are not covered by our tool because they are too dangerous for such a simple model. Every control strategy describes protective measures, and these protective measures are mentioned in control guidance sheets. The EMKG concept is not new, and the software is a relatively new product of the EMKG concept. But the software offers you that you can document your risk assessment for risk by inhalation, skin contact, and fire and explosion risks for your documentation. Now to the development of the EMKG. Well, in 2005, the first 2 modules for inhalation and skin contact had been published. There was a written manual and a PDF file, and to support the users who wanted to try it, we had an Excel spreadsheet. Soon afterwards, the substances with an occupational exposure level were integrated. The whole time since the EMKG has been published, we had updates of control guidance sheets and generated specific new ones. We were challenged by the adaptation to the CLP regulation because the tool had to function both ways. With the old regulation, with R phrases, but it also should handle hazard statements and the slightly modified classification rules. And then we started the EMKG software development, and we also have an app for your smartphone devices, but later more to this. More content development. The new module for fire and explosion, and we also had some validation projects for our control guidance sheets. And these new validated control guidance sheets are also supported with video sequences. So this was a lot of content-related development during the EMKG development phase. And this leads us to a lot of questions. For example, what is our didactic concept? What are the needs of our target group? What about acceptance and usability? And after we found the answers to those questions for us, we started the product development. And this is the main focus of the presentation. I will start with the EMKG software. Well, the software is available in German and English. It's developed for Germany, and maybe there are some specific national factors in it, like my colleague mentioned before with the France tool, but it's also available in English, so everybody could technically use it. But has to keep in mind that maybe in his country there are some special national rules. Other languages can be added. This is really interesting, and if other institutions are interested, they could contact us. It's just a translation point. Somebody has to do the translation work, and it could be integrated into the software with an update. So, of course, the institutions had to check with the legal departments how this would work out, but it's definitely possible, and we thought from the beginning of it to share this opportunity. We have different software versions. By asking our users, we got the information that most users have not all administration rights at their workstation computers, so they cannot install any software product. And therefore, we have a standalone version that doesn't need the installation process at their computer. And the software doesn't need the internet at all. So, of course, for updates, and if you would like to use all the support in the tool, if you would like to click at the link that gives you furthermore help. But just for doing your risk assessment in your company, you wouldn't need any internet connection. And all of your data will be stored at your computer. It's not a web tool. This is really important for many companies due to confidentiality issues. And for bigger companies that are also interested in our tool, we are working on a server version of the EMKG software, because multi-user needs are different than for really small companies. Another point is the EMKG software is for free downloadable at our website. So, another important point is the development is not finalized, and to be honest, if you are developing an e-tool, you will be never finished. There's always an ongoing process. Our next steps are to include the model for fire and explosion risk. And after that, we will finish the project EMKG 3.0 and entering our final maintenance phase. And the maintenance phase is not to underestimate, because from the beginning of planning a software, you need to have a plan. What will you do when you finally release the product, have finished your testing phase, and what comes after it? You have to deal with updates, errors, regulatory changes, and if you want that your tool will be used and fit for purpose in future, you need to have a plan for this. Well, now to the more interesting part for you, the pitfalls that arises during the development. Well, the important pitfall is the communication factor, and that's not only in this case. Software developers and chemists or safety engineers speak different languages. Even all participants spoke German in this case. Communication is really a big issue. Because most software developers have never handled hazardous substances or didn't have a clue about risk assessment and how complicated it is and what are the legal requirements. So you have to make it understandable to them that they can really develop a tool that reflects what you had in mind at the beginning. So communication is the key. Well, and then the test phase. The test phase needs a lot of time, and the test panel. We had voluntary companies that we knew from former projects. They had already used the EMKG and were really interested to try the software. But we also had companies that said, you are not an enforcement agency, so we can tell you we have never done a risk assessment before, but we are willing to try. Can we try it with the software and with your help? So we say, yes, of course, can you try? Then we had a lot of colleagues who tested, and of course the contractor we had during the whole project phase. We simulated test cases for all eventualities that can occur during using the EMKG and a test protocol, because you have to set rules, what is a major mistake, what is just not nice and have to be repaired the next time. And sometimes it's really hard with the timing. You're waiting for the new release and the date is coming closer and you're testing and find new mistakes. That's a problem, but every time you have to deal with it. I guess my colleague can tell also a lot of stories about it. So, what was our biggest surprise? The EMKG app. Well, the EMKG app is a technical adaptation of our EMKG pocket, disk and card. These disk and card are one of our oldest projects of the EMKG, and we normally use it to explain how to use the EMKG for beginners. And we also used it to explain it to the software developers, and after a few weeks they called us and said, "Oh, we have something we would like to show you." They showed us the first draft of the app for mobile devices. And we said, "Yes, you understood it correctly, but can we add this, can we add that?" And now the EMKG app is a more advanced version of our disk. The EMKG app is available for Android systems and iOS, and you can freely download it in your app store. Maybe you would like to try and we can talk later about it. And just put EMKG in your app store. And it's also available in English and German. It depends on your language setting at your mobile device. And here the result is a control strategy level. And then you need to look up the control guidance sheets. It's really nice in the app, you're already connected to the control guidance sheets. This was our biggest surprise, and we're really happy about this product that we never planned at all. And another big surprise were the needs of bigger companies. The EMKG was especially designed for small and medium-sized companies, but we never expected that also big companies would like to use it, and this group is still growing, and therefore we also developing the multi-user server version. So even if you have planned only to help the small companies, sometimes it turns out you are helping also the big players. Well, my conclusion, developing an e-tool, yes, it's challenging, it's time-consuming, but nowadays it's my point of view that it's inevitable. We use technical devices all the time for our daily routine, and keeping in mind that we have a promotion phase and a lot of feedback from our user, it's definitely worth it. And then there are some points I would like to keep you in mind. Feedback process is important. Keep in contact with your users and take their comments into account. Maybe they won't call you and say, "There's a problem and we found a mistake in your e-tool." They will like it or dislike it somewhere, or they send a really bad comment and write it in the app stores, and you will never see it because most of us work in institutions that don't have experience with social media at all. And this is something you need to take care of as well. You have to make sure that there's technical support for the users. Prepare answers to frequently asked questions, because there are always questions like, how do I start this software? How do I print the results? How do I do this and that? Therefore, frequently asked questions are always helpful, and you need the infrastructure to do the support. And keep track of regulatory changes. You have to keep up to date, otherwise the tool cannot be used from your users if you're too late. And you definitely have to communicate with them. What did we do for promotion? We always promoted the EMKG on trade fairs, even before we had the software at all. The next trade fair is at the middle of October, A+A in Düsseldorf, and we are there as always with our exhibition stand, and the users can come to us and ask questions, meet our experts, or try the new products. We have workshops for experts, multipliers, and users, and they all have different needs. And different expectations. So we get their feedback and we discuss with them what we can do with the future development. The next workshop for users is at the end of January. And of course, we will promote the EMKG concept as a whole at the national kickoff session for the Healthy Workplace campaign next year at the end of April. Furthermore, in Germany at some universities, the EMKG is part of lectures. For example, chemistry students in Dortmund, where Bauer is located, learn in a lecture something about occupational safety and health, and that the EMKG concept exists, and that it's helpful for them to take protective measures at their workplaces, at their possible later workplaces. We have a newsletter, and of course we have a lot of training material, posters, training presentations, and training examples. There's a short overview about our further project, the EMKG product family. We have the software, the app, our pocket discs for skin inhalation, and we have another disc for fire and explosion risks. And we have the control guidance sheet that is the heart of the EMKG. In the control guidance sheets describes the protective measures that you need to implement at your workplace, because the tool can be extraordinarily good. If somebody doesn't know how to implement the protection measures at the workplace, then it's nothing. We also asked ourselves how to get more users, how to improve risk assessment at workplaces. We created a starter set, and I hope it will be finished for the trade fair at the end of October, so the deadline is coming closer. And that will be a small set of the EMKG that helps the user to find its way to doing risk assessment at workplaces. What we have planned for the sustainability of the project and the EMKG itself. Well, regular updates, technical, content-related updates, because some control guidance sheets are older than 20 years. They have to be updated, and we're working on it. There are some new technologies that have to be taken into account. We have a maintenance contract for regular technical updates and the feedback process, direct contact to all user groups, and we keep up to date with regulatory activities. Furthermore, we also have a connection to REACH. We have a new research project called REACH to SDS, where we analyze the connection between supply chain communication and data generated via REACH and the connection to workplace risk assessment. That's really interesting, and it will last for the next 4 years, and we will see if we can improve the connection between these two regulatory parts. If you are more interested in the EMKG, visit our website. Unfortunately, the Bauer website has not a lot of English information right now because there is an update. But at the end of the year, we will find there more English information. If you have a specific question, you can definitely contact me. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Nicoletta, for the insight into the development of the EMKG tool and sharing the experiences and challenges with us. Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask Nicoletta at this stage?
Hello, thank you. Yes, I was curious about this starter set you mentioned, because we all want to find ways of finding new users. Is it digital or is it something? It's printed.
Yes, there are old school flame printers, because we made the experience of such. We made the experience that such a complex topic like risk assessment always needs a starting point where somebody can see something and feel and try something, because otherwise they think it's a black box, they have no influence on doing it, and they can remember it better for the first time when they have something to try. So the starter set will contain the discs, some more information if the EMKG is really suitable for their process, because if it's a company that only uses substances that are so dangerous that we say, okay, it's a way higher protection necessary than closed system, then the EMKG is the wrong tool for them. So we made clear what are the rules for using the EMKG and information what is it and is it suitable for you and your company. So they will find a way and don't need a lot of time to figure it out if it's really fit for them.
Hiya. Thanks. I just have a general question, and it probably applies to the previous speaker as well. Has anybody come across a situation where the use of the e-tool has been tested in a legal situation? In other words, where an organization or an employer have used an e-tool, you know, of whatever type, and there's a reason for a subsequent prosecution of a business or an employer due to breaches of legislation, and where possibly the e-tool has been used as a defence, as a kind of as a reason, say, to show that the employer had complied with legislation and had done everything possible to prevent, you know, an accident, for example. Just because I'm from Ireland, we have a very popular e-tool in Ireland as well that's used by thousands and thousands of businesses, and I'm just curious, we haven't come across that situation in Ireland. Just wondering, has it come up anywhere?
Far I know, and not so far I know, but we have come across some similar situations during our research project. It's not an enforcement activity, but we visited companies using the EMKG, and they said, we have all the protection measures, but then we say, yes, but you have an emission control, but you didn't switch it on. So, and things like that. Then, of course, if the labor inspectors came and they haven't used their protection measures that are installed, of course they have to say guilty in that case. But it's not a mistake of the tool and the model in these cases. And so, of course, the companies always have to implement and use the protection measures that are necessary. If they don't use it correctly, then no tool can cover this.
Nicola, did you have anything to add to whether your tool had been used to try and say, well, we've used the tool, so therefore we're in compliance with legislation?
In fact, in French regulation, this is a result objectives in hygiene and health and not a mean objective. So if there is a problem, a disease or an injury, the responsibility is for the company. It's not the tool or the compliance. You don't just need to really comply with the regulation. You need to have results. In fact, I don't have feedback about that, but I think this is not very common to use our tool to use this in order to legal purposes. I think for legal purposes, maybe it's more useful to have exposure data. You can have more confidence here or more confidence results with exposure data than in models. Model is not crystal ball.
Yeah, a colleague beside you.
Thank you. One of the first slides showed you integrated OEL substances. I assume they cope with exposure by inhalation. How do you cope with exposure by dermal contact? Do you make reference to dermal limit values?
No, we don't make reference to dermal limit values because the protection measures are, well, you have gloves or no gloves if you're honest for skin protection, and then we say we have a tiered approach for the skin for risk by skin contact, and different control guidance sheets who recommend how to behave if it's possible that skin contact with a certain hazardous substance occur. And This will guide you through this. We have no values for skin contact integrated.
We're starting to talk about skin contact. I just wondered when I saw what kind of risks you included in the tool. It's about inhalation and skin and fire and explosion. When I look at the statistics on occupational chemical accidents, one of the most common ones is spillages of caustic substances, acids and other, and problems. Well, you get burns from them. Is that also included?
But we are working on it. We're working on new control guidance sheets that are dealing specific with this topic, and we plan some further projects that are really dealing with acids especially.
Okay. And if I may continue, these tools you've presented seem to have a very, very strong focus on risk assessment. When I look at chemical risk management in small enterprises, there's also a need for example, training of employees. You have to assure that you've got the safety data sheets required for all substances. Maybe you also need some kind of purchasing routines and so on. I noticed you talked about an inventory, but you've limited the tools to the risk assessment. Has there been any discussion about expanding the tools, or is it just that this is a suitable piece of work to include in a tool?
Well, our tool makes references. It creates a database, and so you have the inventory of the substances you're dealing with, and it makes always references to training, and that there are further obligations there for the employer when they are dealing with hazardous substances. It's not strictly the risk assessment alone. It gives a lot of support and help with the whole surrounding. It goes not into the deep detail, but it gives the employer a hint where to find more information, and that there are some other obligations you have to deal with too.
Each risk assessment?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe I was not clear enough, but management of risk is one half of CEREACH. Of course, we are giving many advices specific to chemicals or to sector of industry. So this is a big part in CEREACH, management of risks. This is like 50% of the tool, but I don't show you, but I can maybe later.
I was just wondering how your tools address areas where there are more restrictions, like the protection of pregnant workers or the protection of young workers, or specific provisions for the use of carcinogens, how they address these.
It's not directly addressed in the tool, but in the control guidance sheets, there are paragraphs that say, keep in mind for your minimum standards if there are, for example, pregnant women or other needs that they have to cover.
In CEREACH, we have specific advice for vulnerable population, like pregnant women, also with young workers and employees. In fact, we detect specific hazards like CMR or other hazards like sensitizer too. And we give specific advice for specific populations, and you have specific action in your action plan. And by example, we said, be careful if you've got a pregnant woman exposed to these chemicals, you have to tell before the occupational physician if this is possible, or if she needed to be retired for. So we deal with this specific population in Serich.